Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am back live with my second episode of Beneath the Surface. And my name is Jen Spencer. I am the co founder of Pause and Expand. And this is exciting. I've decided to come back. First one went well, ready to do another one. So, for those of you that don't know, Beneath the Surface is a show that sits really at the intersection of business and spirituality. So, I'm really on a mission to understand how successful business people are using spirituality in their day to day lives and how it's influencing their mindsets and really their path to success, how they got to where they are today. So, today, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Akil Augustine. So Akil is, when you see him, you'll probably recognize him. He's a very, very well-known sports host, producer. He works with the NBA, ESPN, and the Toronto Raptors. And he's also the one that was rallying us and rallies us at Jurassic Park, and when the Leafs and the Raptors are in the playoffs, Akil actually is the one that's standing there rallying tens of thousands of people in the actual live experience. So I'm really excited to welcome Akil. Akil's also been really open about his relationship with meditation, with breath work, with sound therapy, and his own journey with mental health. And he just feels like the perfect person to talk to about this intersection of business and spirituality. So without further ado, let's welcome Akil to the show. Hi, Akil.
What up, what up, what up? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. You are the official second guest on the show. And I appreciate you trusting me coming on and just being open to have this conversation with me.
Well, I'm thankful for how you allowed me to be part of this. And, super big fan of yours ever since I was introduced to you through the Pause and Expand team and our good friend Steve. And, I'm just happy to support.
Oh, thanks, Akil. So I have to be honest, it's funny right now. I was talking to Steve right before I came on and we went live. I am totally having imposter syndrome right now because I am sitting here. This is my second episode of my show, and I'm talking to someone who does this for a living, who has produced shows, who has talked to some of the most famous basketball players out there. And I'm curious, I guess to kick it off, do you ever run into imposter syndrome? Does this ever happen to you when you go live and are in front of tens of thousands of people?
Every day. It's an ongoing battle, I think, sometimes when you're lucky enough for people to see something in you where they put you in a position to host or guide people through events. Sometimes you doubt what they see in you. But I think the
Mhm.
body of work speaks for itself. And after a time, there are days when you feel super confident and you believe in yourself and you believe in your ability to do the job. But then there are days where, you'll flub a line or you'll just get a new opportunity that seems bigger than any other opportunity you've had before. And you'll really have a moment where you take a pause and you're like, wow, am I really ready to do this? So
Mm.
I think it's a constant battle. You have your highs and your lows, but I think the key is to consistently just step into the moment and see what happens from there. So
Mm. What's the moment where you had that experience happen to you and you really had to have that inner dialogue with yourself? Like in the moment, you're live, being broadcast, in many, many different places. What's a moment where you actually had to have that conversation with yourself? And what do you typically tell yourself in those moments where that experience comes up?
it rarely ever happens before or during the job. I think,
Mm.
shouts out to my practices with breath work and meditation. I kind of go offline in a sense and I really lock in on the path, the task at hand when I'm doing the job. I
Mm.
think there are moments where you're unhappy or dissatisfied with a performance you've had, and then you start to second guess and ruminate in the post event conversations you have with yourself and have those negative dialogues. I think that's when I really question myself after like a bad show.
Mm.
Uh, and I think the task is really for me to quiet my mind, go do something physical involving my body, and then get to the next event. And then when I kill the next event,
Yeah.
that reassures me that, you know what, you're on the right path and you're in the right walk of life.
Yeah, that's interesting what you're sharing about this idea of this inner critic that we talk about a lot in the work that we do, that you've talked a lot about in the sessions that you've been a part of with us as well, is this voice of the inner critic that is constantly talking in our ear, telling us what we can't do. And then it's this continuous process of trying to remind yourself, wait, I do have the capability. I am able to do this. And then actually reminding yourself by proving over and over again that you're capable, right?
Yeah, it's a big ask, especially when there are things that happen maybe behind the scenes, life changes, events that maybe disappoint you, and you bring that with you to work because a lot of your ego, a lot of your self identity is not just built upon the work that you do, but also the ego that you've built. And so I think it's very important to give yourself grace and to treat yourself like you would treat someone else, like a child or a best friend. I don't think we ever
Mm.
do ourselves the way we would to the people that we love. We give ourselves the harshest version of our critiquing mind.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. If you're here right now and you're joining us live, let us know in the chat what your experience has been with imposter syndrome. Would love to have you engage in the conversation. Akil, I'd love for you to actually just tell us a little bit about what you do in your own words. What does the sort of day-to-day experience in the life of Akil look like?
You know, for lack of a better term, I provide energy. So I host television programming for the Toronto Raptors on NBA TV Canada. I host a daily recap podcast style show. Do live event hosting, also a lot of social media hosting and producing different features and segments for not only the Raptors, but I also get involved with Toronto Maple Leafs when need be. Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment has a whole host of entities that we've all worked for. I work with Toronto FC. I work with the Argos. I work with the Marlies. We've had our chance to work with Live Nation. So we get a lot of opportunities, the team that I work with, to work with a lot of different brands. And I'm usually asked to, if not ideate on some cool new initiatives or ways to communicate with the fans, than to just take maybe a partnership with a product brand and bring that energy on camera.
Hmm. So, I'm hearing you talk about the work you do in your day-to-day life, and then you've also talked about breath work and mindfulness and meditation, all of these different concepts. When I think of those two worlds, they feel very, very opposite to me. The world of sports, entertainment, basketball, the world of meditation, mindfulness, spirituality. But somehow you sit at the intersection of the two of these things. What does that look like in terms of how you sort of see these two worlds at all coming together if they do?
I think the key is performance. They
Mm.
all involve a bit of performance. And I think for me, I look at myself as a performer. I look at myself as an artist with words, an entertainer. And so I think in order to be able to execute your task at the highest level, your body is kind of your tool, your voice is your tool, your mind is your tool. So I've used my spirituality to prime myself to be in the best state, the highest energy state possible in order
Mm.
to transmute that energy on stage or through the camera to the fans. I remember when I was really young, I watched Rest in Peace, Tina Turner's documentary, and heard
Mm.
chanting Nyam Yoho Renge Kyo, and realized like that meditation was a really big key in priming yourself and priming your state and priming your body. And I think that's the big key for me. Spirituality has allowed me to get into a state where I can go on stage and not feel that imposter syndrome, not feel fear, and really just give something to the crowd or give something to the audience. And I think that's where it intersects for me is I utilize my spirituality as a tool to get me into the best shape possible to do my job.
Mm. Do you ever find yourself having conversations with um, people in the sports world about these topics, or do you find that you have to kind of separate them? So there's the
No, I made it my agenda on occasion to have
Mm.
those conversations. I had my own TV show for a while, and we talked about these things. These are things that are close to my heart, and I think they're things that help young people and athletes. And I've always wanted to champion ideas that I thought would bring something to people's lives. So I've always made it a point to make sure to wear my heart on my sleeve. And there's a point during the pandemic where I started hosting live breathwork sessions for people who
Yes.
surprised to see me doing that because it came out of left field for a lot of people knowing my history in the business. So, I wear my heart on my sleeve and I let everyone know what I'm doing oftentimes.
Mm. Where do you think that comes from? This whole concept of Because I do really feel that you are someone that does that. Every time I interact with you, every time Steve, my partner's interacted with you, he always has this real feeling of connection with you. Where does that come from? Like, where did you learn that? Was it from a young age? Was it something that happened specifically that like allowed you to have this way of seeing the world and starting to learn some of these concepts that you bring into your work?
As a kid, I was starved for attention, youngest of like 6 or 7 in the household. So you really had to fight for your moment in the spotlight. So
Mm,
I've always had a penchant for performance. And, as you grow up and you learn adults and ways to manipulate them in school and ways to get attention and get what you want, you figure out that, being earnest, being genuine, and having open conversations with people is an easy way to bridge any gaps you have with people. And it's been a cornerstone of my personality ever since. And it served me well.
mm. Do you see yourself being a mentor to other people? Like when you talk about this, I feel like you're probably an anomaly in a lot of places where you are the only one or one of the very few people that is really living and speaking in this way. Do you feel that you end up becoming a mentor to other people? And if so, how does that look? I know you've done work with a lot of underprivileged youth, and that's something you're really passionate about. Talk a bit about that and how that has kind of shaped your path.
We're all mentors, I think, and I've accepted that a long time ago. Whether you're doing something positive or negative, you're a mentor. I think people kind of associate being a mentor with doing something positive or taking the time to acknowledge that you're mentoring people, but we're
Mm,
all mentoring people. I remember the people that were older than me that did negative things and did positive things, and they all rubbed me and affected me in certain ways. And so I kind of accepted that I wanted to have a positive impact on people, so I'm going to be a mentor in this way. But I've always acknowledged that. I think I was fortunate enough to have a lot of guys in my community who recognized that they were mentors. They talked to me as mentors, and so I'm just trying to pay it forward, pass that buck along, and I think it helps me too. It helps keep me in check, and it helps me stay on the right path and to continue to
mm.
move forward in my career by saying, "Hey, I'm doing this for someone coming after me," and so it kind of keeps those train tracks rolling.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me a bit about the work that you do in the programs that you do, like the youth programs that you work on. How has that helped your journey? How has it shaped your journey? Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I've been very fortunate enough that a lot of the guys I grew up with, who were my peers, decided to get into teaching, coaching, or starting youth programs. I think Toronto really changed over the last 10, 20 years with a lot of the guys that are my age taking active
Mhm.
responsibility and rearing the youth that would normally get lost in the system. And I think the system's changed itself in acknowledging that there were a lot of shortcomings in the way that young Black men and women were being mentored or taught. And so there was a gap to fill, and there's been a lot of new programs that have come out. And because these guys are my friends and they see the opportunity I have and the visibility I have with the Toronto Raptors, it's kind of added some extra weight to the words I say, because kids, obviously being big basketball fans and Raptors fans, um, they see me out there, they see my platform, and so it gives me a little bit of leverage to say things that maybe if their parents said or their siblings said, they probably may not listen in the same way. So I've
Mm,
used the platform that I've been given with the Raptors, with Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, with the Argos, with the Leafs, just to champion ideas that I think would be, you know, solid advice that would serve these kids well. So I've
mm,
worked with Northern Kings AAU basketball program, Boys to Men programming. MLSC Launchpad has given me a lot of opportunities to work with the different programs that they have. Kickback initiative started by my good friends and some kids that I mentored over at Tier Zero production company. They've done great things in the community. I got a good friend who runs a program out of Jane and Finch, Phoenix basketball. They've done great work. I've stayed in contact with Central Tech High School, Eastern Commerce when it was still around. So I think there's a lot of people who are doing great stuff, and just being adjacent to them and rubbing shoulders with them, they've asked me to come and lend my voice. And then that's kind of where it kind of goes from there.
mm. How do you like, do you ever feel pressure to show up in a certain way? Like you're a pretty big voice in the city of Toronto. Um, do you ever feel pressure to have to be a certain way? Like when you're doing all of this incredible work, you're showing up in the way that you're showing up. Do you ever feel pressure to actually have to be a certain type of person?
Yeah, I think it's something I battle with all the time. A little bit of a people pleaser too, being one of
Mm,
the younger children in the house. You kind of learn to behave as is necessary in order to not ruffle feathers. And then as you become someone who, has a little bit of platform, you kind of want to live up to the expectations and the reputations you've built. So I'm extremely hard on myself at times if I don't meet my own very high standards, a little professionalism in there. And that's these are things that I'll wrestle with the rest of my life, right? There's no quick, easy answer to how to deal with this. I think we see celebrities deal with this all the time
Yeah.
on large platforms, and each of us have to deal with it in our own way in our own lives, whether it's living up to the expectations of your mom and dad, your friends, your peers, your social media following. There's a little bit of that for all of us, and I think I've got it in spades, and I continue to deal with it, and I think that's where my spirituality really helps. And I think a big part of it too is constructing good narratives around yourself and recognizing that you're not expected to be this superstar that you see, for 20 minutes on a show or 1 hour on a show. You're a 24-hour being, and you can't live up to those standards. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah. When you think of the mentors that you've had in your life, did they embody the qualities that you have, or do you try to continue to embody those qualities in your own life?
I think the biggest quality that I embody, whether I got it from, I don't think I saw it a lot when I was younger, is just energy. I was blessed with a tremendous amount of energy. It's something I've used to propel myself to this stage in my life. And maybe it's not something I saw modeled, but it's something that I saw rewarded in myself from other people, right? I think adults will give you these little breadcrumbs of appreciation and acceptance and love when they see something in you that they enjoy. And I think one thing that was always reinforced for me was, man, you got a lot of energy, keep that up. And so I think I kind of doubled down on the energy I bring into a room, the volume I speak with, the smile on my face, and kind of where I've kind of built my home.
Who's someone that was a mentor to you? Like, give me an example of someone in your life that has shown up that way, that has helped you really to do the things that you're talking about.
Um, I would say one of the biggest. I got a lot of mentors from TV. I got to I was a big fan of guys like Chris Tucker, Dave Chappelle, Eddie Murphy, whose personalities really dictated how the room moved and who really were able to grab people's attention. But I think my sister was a really big influence on myself, simply because she's someone who was in a lot of precarious situations as a young woman, forced to provide for herself and myself at times, and did it with a smile on her face. And I could never really tell exactly how distressed she was. So she carried that kind of superwoman badge where like she was in a tough situation, but she wouldn't lead on to it so that I would know. So that's another big influence on myself. And I think luckily for me, I had a guy like Badal Messiah, who's a pretty high level basketball player who I was really close with from a young age. And I got to see him accomplish a lot of his life dreams, like winning basketball tournaments, getting scholarships, getting contracts overseas to play pro ball. And as a big basketball fan and someone who wanted to work in the basketball world, his success kind of rubbed off on me, where I got to have a lot of conversations and make a lot of contacts in the basketball world and access to a lot of ideas and people, which eventually led to me kind of, having access to people on my show and to get into certain rooms. So there's been tons of people who've influenced me and been mentors in that way.
What do you think you learned from him? What was the biggest lesson that you would say that you take away from him specifically?
I think to make it happen, not to rely on anyone else, to go out there and to strike up conversations and to put people in a position where you can ask for help. You can say, hey, I'm working on this thing. How can you help me? How can I help you? Really, it's a positive trade-off. Like, you may be asking someone for help, but the help they give you could end up being something that they needed, right? You provide service. My energy and my personality at their event add something to their event. Their event all of a sudden got better because I hosted it, right? So don't think it's a one-way street. So probably just to value the contributions that I made, even if I am asking for help or asking to be put in a position, just know that I'm bringing something to the table that's gonna improve, the lot for everybody.
Yeah, the concept of asking for help is an interesting thing, right? Because sometimes there's this perception that if we ask for help, like it's going to seem like we're weak if we ask for help. But actually, the more and more, especially as an entrepreneur, that I'm realizing asking for help is actually the way forward. It's probably one of the only ways that we can continue to move and grow is by asking people for help. When is a time that you feel you didn't ask for help, but you probably should have? Is there something that comes to mind in your life where, or even a period in your life where you were more dead set on doing it yourself and not actually asking for help? And like, what did you learn from that?
I think right now, I think I'm in a position right now where I'm trying to expand my network and do new things. And I think because of the success I've had, I'm probably uncomfortable in asking people and reaching out to people in my network, and putting myself in a position to ask for help. So I think that's something I'm going into right now. Like I talk about having that imposter syndrome at times throughout your life. I think right now, the other edge of that sword is also having the imposter syndrome and then having the success that you've had and feel like, how can I actually be the person to be putting myself in a position to be asking for an introduction or for this funds to start an initiative or for an opportunity to walk into a certain room. So I think it's something that like probably I'm experiencing more now, because when you don't have a lot, it's easy to be humble and to come into a room and to ask for help. When you
Mm.
feel like you've reached a certain point, it probably becomes a bigger ask of yourself to humble yourself and to say, hey, I know I've had these successes in the past, but I'm looking to do this new thing. How can you help me?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really, really interesting point. It's like there's a point where we should already know all the answers, right? We should already have figured it all out. So like, why would I ask someone for help? That's just going to make me look like I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm doing. I should know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
What is the help you think you need? Like if you were to ask for help right now, like what is it that you need help with?
You don't know what you don't know. But I
Mm.
think as a performer, I've excelled in performance, and I probably haven't done as much as a businessman as I would
Mm.
like. I think as a performer, you go from gig to gig, contract to contract, and a lot of your worth is dictated on the market's demand for your talents.
Yeah.
But how do you, as a performer, now drum up a market for yourself? Like, have you built up a Rolodex of names for a newsletter that you can, you know, network with and send out product? And can you merchandise your own product? And can you, are you doing your taxes properly to make sure that you're stashing the money in the right way? I think there's a
Mm.
lot of things that you can do to grow as a business person. I think as a business person, that's probably where I need to grow the most. I think as a
Yeah.
performer, you're very limited to how hot your name is at that point in time. And I think you can mitigate, the ups and downs of the market by being more prepared financially on your spreadsheets and also being capable of owning your audience. And I think social media's kind of taught us a little bit of that, but I think I could
Yeah.
probably get a lot better at that.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine you're a performer and you're a host and you're a producer, and then there's this whole other side that you also need to also have, right? It's like the journey of entrepreneurship has all these facets, and we're supposed to somehow know how to do all of them. But I
Yeah.
agree with you, that's where asking for help comes in. Um, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, because you've talked a lot about spirituality, the modalities that you use. Where did you learn about spirituality? Like, where was there a moment? Was there a series of moments that you really started to get interested in spirituality?
Yeah, there was. I came to Canada illegally, so I was a legal immigrant. So there was a stretch in my early adulthood where I was not able to work in the country, and I had
Mm.
gotten opportunities for scholarships and for work programs, but because I didn't have a social insurance number, I wasn't able to accept them. And I think for in that period, I was pretty depressed. I didn't know what the future held, but luckily. At I do believe it was Richmond and John. There was a Chapters bookstore upstairs of the theater, and one day when I was just not feeling it, I was kind of depressed. I went to that store and I stumbled upon the Dalai Lama's Book of Happiness. And
Mm.
probably the book that affected me the most and got me out of my doldrums, out of the slump that I was in. And then from there, I just started to constantly consume books on Eastern thought. And that's when Taoism and Buddhism became huge interests of mine. And then from there, I learned about all the other different types of practices that I could use to pride my state.
Mm. What is it about either that book or one of the books you've read recently about spirituality? What is the Oh, Akil's gone. He dropped off. So we are going to wait until Akil comes back. Um, in the meantime, I want to say that it's really interesting talking to someone like Akil, who has such a presence in the world of sports and entertainment, and then also has this really, really deep knowledge of spirituality. I mean, it's very rare for us to find people like this. And it's been really cool actually to talk with Akil, to just learn more about what he's doing to actually allow himself to stay balanced when things get out of whack. I can tell you right now in this moment, I am definitely afraid because this has not gone how I thought it would go. Um, we always worry about these technical problems that are going to happen, and then they happen. And what do we do? What do we do in the moment, right? How do we actually allow ourselves to maintain a state of balance, maintain a state of equilibrium when things kind of go off the rails? So, yeah, I'm just acknowledging that right now in this moment for myself, that there's definitely some fear coming up around that. And just allowing myself to be with it, to be with the discomfort of it all. And thank you, Jim. Thank you. Yeah, it's a funny thing when we start to. Oh yeah, Candace, yeah. Thank you all for joining in the conversation with me. I had no idea, Candace is saying, I had no idea that's what he did. He's even more awesome than I previously thought. Yeah, so Akil's actually been a part of our community, our Pause and Expand community for a while. And it's been really cool to actually get to speak to him more about what he does and actually be able to just get a better understanding of who he is and how his mind works. And especially as someone who's very prominent in the Toronto sports scene, I've always had this mindset that people in the world of sports are a certain way, and that's a judgment of mine. And then to actually be able to talk to someone like Akil, who's not only a mentor, but also is a presence in the Toronto sports world, is pretty cool. So, yeah. So I'll be honest, I don't know if Akil's coming back. I have a feeling something happened to his internet connection, and that might be the end of our conversation. So maybe I'll have him back. I'll have him back another day on the show, and we will do a part 2 on Akil when he's able to join us. So on that note, Steve, do you want to come up here? My partner Steve's here. Maybe I'll just bring Steve on for 2 minutes and we'll talk. Okay. I have a new guest. His name is Steve. Come and join us, Steve.
Hey.
Okay. I'm bringing Steve on.
Yeah. Oh, is he coming back?
Plot twist. Oh, Akil's here.
Is he back?
Okay, he's here.
Okay.
We'll bring him back.
All right. Oh, you don't need me anymore.
1,000 apologies. My device crashed. I don't know what happened.
Okay, so we had a whole bunch of people commenting with me. It was great. I had some incredible comments. People think you're incredible. And, I think the thing that I'm noticing in the comments that people are sharing right now is there's an element of surprise in your story. Like, how could this person who is so interested in sports, in sports production, he's been this host of all these things, he's a big presence in the world of sports in Toronto, how could he be so interested in spirituality? Like, how do those two things make sense? So tell us a little bit about that, because that's kind of where we got kicked off.
Well, I mean, life's a lot more than your job. I think when people see you in a certain walk of life, they assume that you go home and it's more of the same in that respect. But I think we've all got moms and dads, we've all got brothers and sisters, a lot of us have children, and those relationships, they diverge. They do not follow the same path as your job. My mom and dad have absolutely no knowledge of the game of basketball or hockey. My sister has no interest in professional sports. My daughter doesn't know that those games exist yet. So I think life is a lot wider than the job that you do. I think my job has been a huge part of my personality and persona for a long time. My girlfriend, she's when she sees me at work or at an event, she goes, "Go sports." No interest in what specifically is happening in the game. She's just happy to see me on stage. So I think life's a lot bigger than your job. So I think, for 20 some odd years before I started working with Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, I was a whole human being. And I think, I had my own demons and battles. I have born in Trinidad and Tobago, emigrated to Canada, a student, not a great student in school. So I had my struggles to get to the point where I could go to post-secondary education. No money for post-secondary education, so I had to work my ass off for a scholarship. So
Mm.
within each and every one of those battles or stories, there are things you're fighting and there are things you're trying to accomplish. And I think the thing about spirituality was I always use the word priming my state. The thing about spirituality was it was the tool that no matter what was happening around me in my life, uh, allowed me to, when it came time to perform, whether it was a school play, whether it was a football game, whether it was an interview, whether it was a group project, it put me in the best mind state so that I could be fully present,
Mm.
aware, and functioning at a high level. And so I think that's where spirituality has played a huge part in my life. I think a lot of people, when they think of spirituality, they think of life after death. They think of, ooh,
Totally.
you're thinking about what happens after you leave here. But for
Yeah.
me, spirituality is about what happens while I'm here. It's
Mm.
about, for lack of a better term, getting my chakras aligned. It's
Yeah.
about being able to access my full personality, my full knowledge base. It's about being able to feel truly present in my body so that whatever anxieties or discomfort I have don't show up on camera or don't show up on stage.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think that's kind of where spirituality, comes into play for me, in that it's something that allows me to execute whatever task I'm doing at the highest level that I'm capable of at that day.
Yeah. I think it's so powerful that, this concept of spirituality it is in our aliveness. It's in our ability to be here. And there's a lot of these, misconceptions about what spirituality is, what it isn't. It means different things to different, people. But the fact that it's for you, it's like, it feels like it's really about just being alive and being able to be aware and present for all of it as it's happening. Um,
Yeah, I would just say, like, I think before I used to believe in my spirituality as being about preparing myself for what's next, or doing
mm,
the right things so that I could make it to heaven or avoid hell. But what I
yeah.
realized is, there's this continuous presence that I am, and how can I maximize that? And then by doing that, I don't have to worry about the future or the past, because I'm accessing that full body of energy consistently in all situations in all states.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. That's really powerful. Um, Last thing I want to touch on, you just became a dad.
Yes,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Um, I can only imagine the journey of parenthood, and I'm not a parent myself, but I can only imagine how the journey of parenthood changes their life. And I'm curious how, how you want or see yourself incorporating spirituality into the life of your daughter, of how you want to raise her, of how you want to be a parent, and how you want to show up.
I think so. You try to read these books about parenting, and watch the videos online and listen to the gurus, and you try to understand what is best, right?
Mm,
A lot of ideas are about how best to do things, how best, and best is like an amalgamation of, like, you take 100 people and you average out, okay, the number of best is 70. So how do you get 70 of these people to maximize their potential over a group of 100? Well, unfortunately, she's one person. I'm not going to be able to average out or generalize how to approach her. I think she's going to be very much her own person.
mm,
So I think the best way to incorporate spirituality for her is going to be for her to see me use it in a way that allows me to be truly present for her, right? And
mm,
to build a relationship that works with her. Because I've got friends who are parents, and I've got friends who were parents 20 years ago. So I'm friends with my friends' kids now, like they're adults, and I've seen how kids tend to reject um, the tenets of their parents. Like,
mm,
the people who raised me were staunch Roman Catholics. I grew up Roman Catholic, going to church every Sunday up until I was about 14, kneeling down at my aunt's bedside, doing nightly prayers
mm,
every night. I don't do any of that now. So I think the generation that comes after, not to say they spit in the face of what came before, but they definitely try to differentiate themselves, right? And individualize away from what the cultures kind of put on them. And so I'm going to go into the situation with eyes wide open, recognizing that, we're not a Mormon culture. We're not inculcating people and forcing them to follow the tenets or else they'll be excommunicated. In North America, this is a very different society than societies of past, right? You think of other countries across the world, other continents, they have very strong identities. This is a place where people come from all over the world and they bring their identities, they bring their religions, they bring their cultures, and our kids are exposed to all of it. Sometimes none of it, in that the kids that they go to school with fully reject what their parents have brought with them, and they kind of go walk into the world on their own, trying to come up with their own ideas. So I think the best thing I could do is find something that works for me. And if my kids, and if I continue to have a close relationship with my child, and she sees that there's proof in the pudding, it's going to be hard for her to deny that. But for me to sit on, my pedestal and to pass down teachings that she's not going to be able to engage with on a daily basis with her friends, her best friends, her crushes, her teachers. Like, if they're not all engaging in this and it's just coming from me, it's going to be really tough, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why we have such a strong capitalist identity, is because I think capitalism is a touch point that every single person that we interact with engages in. And so, if I can show her that, being capable of being present and grounded in the moment at hand will allow her to be the best, capitalist, the best performer, the best influencer, whatever the kids are into, at least she'll have that foundation of recognizing that me being at my best is what's important for whatever the next layer of the identity that she's engaging in is.
Yeah. As you were talking, I just thought, wow, how lucky to have a parent that aware. Like, wow. Wow.
Well, we'll see how it plays out.
One day at a time, right, Akil? One day at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're almost at time, but I wanted to just give you an opportunity, if there's anything, any advice that you would have for people that are watching right now, anything, that's really resonating with you right now, that is on your heart that you want to share, just as sort of a closing sentiment, closing thought.
You know what? It's funny because you'll come on LinkedIn and you'll see someone's name and you'll be like, oh, I want to hear from that person. They're obviously put in a position to be in a position of authority, and you think they've got things sorted out, right? I'm very fortunate to be in the position I'm in, but ask Steve. There are days where I'll call Steve and ask him for a walk, because I'll wake up some days and I'll not know where north is, where south is, and I'll be like, dude, like, I don't feel like that guy that some people would perceive me as, or it's not all as cut and dry. I don't have it all figured out. It's not all solved. I think we've been very fortunate to, especially as like a single male, childless, living in a big city. I was very fortunate to be as selfish as I was. And I think becoming a father was a huge shock to me. And it's forced my identity to change tremendously. Not too much. I think maybe I tried to overcorrect at times over the 9 months of the pregnancy than necessary, but it's just a huge change in what's happening in your life. So I think I'm not always going to be someone who wants to offer advice as more as I want to offer what I'm experiencing. And I think what I'm experiencing is a complete, I like to think, renaissance, a growth, just settling in even more into my own skin, and recognizing, and I think this is my girlfriend was telling me the other night, that, like, as much as your story changes, the core tenets of who you are don't necessarily need to change, right? And so I'm going to become a father, and there's that stoic energy that you think fathers have, and there's that ancient wisdom that you think fathers have. But my girl was like, well, I mean, what if you're just like the happiest, most energetic dad? Like, won't your kid be happy to have that version of you too? Isn't that a cool dad to have? Uh,
Mm,
so I think for me, it's just a matter of the thing I want to share and the thing I want to share with myself as much as I want to share this with anyone else. And I kind of am reminding myself of is that like not to lose yourself in the change of identity, like
mm,
becoming, turning 40, becoming a father, whatever midlife crises that we experience, like they're jarring. But I think beneath all of the external trappings of a physical body and the roles we play day to day in life, there is a natural energy that you are, and to try to make that show out in whatever roles you play in this version of life that we're in currently. I think
yeah,
that's something that like I'm trying to embody, and every day I'm trying to settle more and more into.
yeah,
And yeah, no, just continue to play the game, play it by
yeah.
ear.
Yeah. I think what I appreciate about this conversation is the realness that you bring to what's really going on. And I think that that's such an important thing, especially coming from someone like you, where we see this this vision of like, oh well, Akil's obviously got it all together.
If
Why
only.
wouldn't he, right? And so I think that, just being able to have this conversation with you to hear like what's really going on, to hear what's important to you has been really, really eye-opening for a lot of us. And I can see a lot of comments in the chat as well. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on, for being willing to just like go a little bit under the surface of what's real, and just appreciate the way you show up and the way that you just present yourself.
Well, I appreciate you for giving me the platform and the opportunity. I enjoyed it. I love talking to people and offering what little wisdom I have and just making myself vulnerable. I think it's very key to like continuing to grow and to continue to be good at my craft.
Yeah.
So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah. And thanks for coming back, because I was like, is Akil coming back? I
I
don't
apologize. I thought my phone had
know. No.
used to last, but it did not. But luckily, I had the laptop handy. I was not going to leave you stranded.
This is one of those things where I said to myself, I'm going to go live and see what happens, and anything can happen. So it's just kind of rolling with what's being presented to you. And that's kind of a theme of what we've just shared about. So it all worked out in the end.
It's a theme of life.
Totally. Thanks so much, Akil. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.